Death, for, is a well-elaborate institution in Luo culture. This institution of Thor has very many rites and very many rituals. The rites and rituals in this institution can be divided into three broad categories. There were rites and rituals that were performed immediately someone was deceased. Then there were rites and rituals that were performed culminating to someone's burial. Then there were rites and rituals that were performed after someone had been buried. The word for in Dholuo has no meaning. The word for, on its face value, has no meaning that it can be associated with. So, we have engineered, we have innovated phrasal verbs to paint the imagery of death. There is lengolep, there is kayopamba, right? And so if you want to explore the origin of the word for, it's interesting that however back you go, you will not get any meaning that was attached to for. So for is an exclamation in Dholuo. Exclamation. Supposing I was carrying a 1-day-old baby and I was rocking this baby to sleep. And as I'm rocking this baby to sleep, for some strange reason, this baby collapsed, slips out of my hands and collapses and goes down, falls down to the ground, right? The natural order of occurrence would be that, right? And it's only natural in Dholuo that one would be followed with "Tho!" that. So anything that you want to exclaim the loss of that thing, ordinarily in Dholuo, it is "Tho!" right? It is from that exclamation that we got the word "for." So "for" in Dholuo is an exclamation that ordinarily emerges out of loss. And the reason why we would exclaim "Tho!" is an individual, a member of the clan, has left us and that individual is not coming back. So that was the way the word death, the word "Tho," originated. It's an exclamation. Thor required different rites to be performed. The rites that were performed to someone who committed suicide were different from the rites that were performed when someone's death had been occasioned by strife between siblings or by strife between members of the clan. The rites that were performed when someone's body was found washing by the river or washing by the lake, the shores of the lake, were very different from the rites that were performed to someone who had an illness that lasted for a longer duration. And so it's important that when we are viewing all these rites, it's important that we ask ourselves, what are the circumstances around which death had been occasioned? Because the circumstances will determine the rites to be performed. The reason why we used to perform these rites were twofold. One, we wanted to appease the dead. So when someone's soul had left the clan, we knew that that person needed to be appeased in a way. So in appeasing, we would perform certain rites. The other rite, the reason why we perform these rites, was when a clan or a family was under the weight of death, what it's called liel otuei. Liel otuei was not stigmatization. We excused someone from the communal social events. We excused an individual. We excused the immediate family members that were bereaved from certain responsibility at the community level. And so the point that an individual would be accepted, or the point at which the individual would be at liberty to join or to perform their communal duties, were at the point someone had exhausted the rites. So it's very important that whenever we are looking at rites and rituals, we look at them from that angle. Were those rituals and rites meant to appease the dead, or were those rituals and rites meant to have someone be at liberty to join and perform their communal rites? There were very many rites, and for the sake of this video, allow me just to talk on one rite. There was the shaving of hair. And the shaving of hair is one of the most misunderstood of all rites in the institution of death. Because this rite has made us to be viewed from a very limiting and very diabolic approach, particularly with the community of clans, not clans, from the community of nations. The rites of death had very many roles to play. One of the roles the rites of the shaving of hair played was the rites of shaving of hair limited the extent at which contamination would occur, particularly in instances whereby someone's death had been occasioned by a long protracted season of illness. Back then, we didn't have sophisticated levels of preserving human bodies. And so anything that was connected to someone's illness, right? The immediate people that came into contact with this person, those people needed to wash. Those people needed to trim everything that might have withheld that contamination. That is why we were shaving hair. Secondly, shaving of hair was to proclaim a new beginning. That from here henceforth, we are now facing life without a significant member of our clan. Immediate family has left us. And that one was for the community now to be very considerate and collegial with an individual at the point that that individual, people shaved their hair. It was a sign, a badge that the community needed to identify these people are beginning something new. Because once you had been assimilated back into the community, then you needed to play your roles. You needed to play and to perform your duties at the clan level. The other one was in shaving of hair, the community would bereave with an individual. So in instances whereby you would go and people maybe were to be considered on the basis of other factors, you, because you have shaved hair, you would be considered. So shaving of hair is one of the most interesting of very many cultural rites in the institution of thought. There are very many others which we will touch on in subsequent videos. For instance, teroburu, teroburu, chodokode is a very interesting rite in the institution of death. And so it's very important that when we are looking at the institution of thought, it's important for us to approach that conversation from a point of what could be the reason why Kwerewa performed what they performed. What could be the reason why Kwerewa requested that such and such were to be performed? What were the reasons and what were the circumstances and how did it help? It's very important for us to begin to understand that culture is appreciated from a point of understanding. Culture, like we have always said here at Baudi, no culture is bad. No culture is good. Your appreciation of culture is only to the extent of the value you derive from that culture. And particularly in our time, we need to look at and we need to interrogate certain cultural practices, certain cultural performances. We need to interrogate them in retrospect. So we judge things in retrospect. Looking back, why do you think they did so and so? Looking back, why were we shaving our hair? Because shaving of hair will not return the person who is deceased. So shaving of hair might have played what in law we call indigenous knowledge at that time. What was the indigenous knowledge? And so it's very important that we begin to understand around that. Dhoudi, making learning language simpler.